is Associate Professor at University College London, a practicing infectious disease physician, and a broadcaster for children and adults on BBC television and radio. His book is called Ultra-Processed People, the science behind the food that isn't food. Chris, welcome to Think.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and I love that synopsis of ultra-processed food. I think I'll borrow some of that.
I'm glad to hear it. I want to start with this. Plain old processed food isn't actually a bad thing, right? Taking fresh tomatoes off the vine and cooking them into a sauce in our kitchens, that is processing. And humans actually need to process many of the things we eat in order to be able to digest them, right?
That's exactly right. We have lots of evidence. People do try to eat whole food diets that are completely raw and unprocessed, and they have all sorts of health problems. They lose dangerous amounts of weight. They have decreases in fertility. So we know that humans are the only animals that have to process our food, and we've been doing it. Hominids have been doing it for millions of years.
All right, so where is the line between processed food and ultra-processed food?
So the line was drawn by a team in Brazil in 2010 when they created the definition of ultra-processed food. And to some extent, the boundary is a little bit blurry. And there's a lot of argument in my Twitter feed at the moment, or people are constantly coming to me, friends, family, strangers, and asking me, is product X, Y, or Z ultra-processed or not? And so there's a small number of products around the edge that we might negotiate around. But broadly, what the team in Brazil were trying to do when they created this definition was describe formally in scientific terms the Western industrial diet, the products that we know now. We have huge amounts of data that are associated with diet-related disease. And diet-related disease is now, by the way, overtaking tobacco as the leading cause of early death on planet Earth for human beings, and of course for animals, because we kill billions of animals to make our ultra-processed food. So the definition is very long. It's recognized by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, by the World Health Organization, by lots and lots of research groups around the world at Harvard, Oxford, ITV, UCL. But it boils down to this: if it's wrapped in plastic and it contains one of those ingredients you don't typically find in a domestic kitchen, then it's very likely to be an ultra-processed product. And drawing the line is not entirely clear, but that working definition actually is really, really useful. If you use that to exclude ultra-processed foods from your diet, you can't go too badly wrong.
Something from the book that will stick with me is that in addition to what you just explained, you say any food that makes a health claim on the label is almost 100% likely to be an ultra-processed food. That might surprise people.
That's right. I mean, some ultra-processed food is really obvious. It's the junk food, the burger chains, the stuff we buy at gas stations. But a lot of it is just our staple food. Almost all the bread, maybe 98% of the bread that people in the US, Canada, the UK that we eat is ultra-processed. It will have emulsifiers like mono and diacetyl tartaric acid esters, mono and diglycerides and fatty acids. That's called dative. It's a very, very common emulsifier in our bread. And we're pretty sure it disrupts our microbiome. It acts as a detergent, scrubbing out our guts. So most of our bread is ultra-processed. Almost all of our breakfast cereals are ultra-processed. Almost all of our yogurts, our snack foods, all of our ready and pre-prepared convenience foods are ultra-processed. So this is why it has become ubiquitous in our diets. It is on average 60% of our calories in the US and the UK come from ultra-processed food. If you're a kid, it's more like 70, 80, 90% would be very, very typical, maybe not average, but would be extremely normal for a young person or even a teenager to get 80% of their calories from ultra-processed food. So it is everywhere. And yes, if there's a health claim on the pack, it's almost certainly UPF, because the only food that is ever marketed to us is UPF. You almost never see an ad for milk, eggs, beef, broccoli, beans. You don't see advertisements for these products on television for economic reasons I can go into lots of detail about, but essentially because there's no intellectual property associated with them. They're commodity foods. You can't make money off them.
Another thing you clear up here, Chris, is that the potential hazards of eating a lot of these ultra-processed foods seem to accrue even if our body weight is in the range considered healthy by doctors, right? This is not just a matter of these foods having the potential to contribute to obesity.
That's right. So we now have, my book doesn't just draw on a single study. We have hundreds of studies. In fact, we now have over 1,000 studies on ultra-processed food in good, reputable journals. And the evidence that we draw on, we have some clinical trials, we have laboratory evidence, but the biggest source of our evidence is these big population studies where we look at groups of people that do and don't eat ultra-processed food. And that's the way that we linked tobacco with all the diseases that tobacco causes. So I would say we are approaching the level of certainty that ultra-processed food causes negative health outcomes that we are with tobacco. And a lot of the studies have focused on weight gain and obesity, but a lot of the other studies have controlled for that and said, well, if two people are the same weight and eating the same amount of, if one person is overweight and one isn't, but they're eating the same amount of ultra-processed food, does the person at a healthy weight still suffer with the effects of ultra-processed food? So there are statistical ways of doing this, and it's very, very clear that even when you adjust for body weight, body fat, then the other harms still occur. So we are now sure that ultra-processed food is strongly associated with, which is the scientific way of hedging our bets, but I would say we're increasingly sure it causes metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes, inflammatory diseases like Crohn's disease, psychological diseases like anxiety, depression. There are early links to ADHD. It may cause dementia. It's also linked to cardiovascular disease like strokes and heart attacks, as well as cancers and death from all causes.
Wow, okay. Before you got really interested in this, you felt like you were eating pretty healthily. You weren't constantly eating fast food. What did you realize was ultra-processed, even in your seemingly pretty decent diet?
In the UK, we our national diet culture has really been taken over by this food, and it's the same in the US, Canada, and Australia. This is now, over multiple generations, our food culture, and in particular the lunch that everyone in the UK eats every day. So we have these meal deals where you get a fizzy soda, a packet of crunchy things, it might be popcorn or crisps or what you would call chips, and then you get a sandwich. And you can persuade yourself that that lunch, if you have a diet soda, and you might have baked potato chips or low salt ones or fried up lentil ones, or there are lots of ones that are claiming to be healthy. And then a sandwich might be full of salad. You might have a falafel sandwich, might be a vegan sandwich. And you can persuade yourself that because you're eating these products all with health claims, they might even be organic, that you're eating a healthy meal. And what's very clear now is when you start reading the ingredients on those products, they are ultra processed, and we have increasingly specific anxieties around certain of those ingredients. So the diet sodas are probably the best example of why the food industry's claim that it can make ultra processed food that's healthy is completely untrue. And we've had the World Health Organization come out this week and say that artificial sweeteners are not associated with weight loss. They may well cause metabolic disease. Many of them elevate your blood sugar, paradoxically, and they may actually cause weight gain in some people.
You share this story of taking your daughters out for frozen treats on a hot day and realizing your 3-year-old's cup of gelato just didn't melt the way ice cream is supposed to melt. What did you learn about why?
This was the most, it sort of set me in the most interesting direction, because one of the things I wanted to do in the book is speak to lots of people from the food industry. So my daughter, Lyra, went to the park and she had this ball of pistachio ice cream. She just left it, she was distracted, she met a friend. And it remained this nearly perfect ball of glistening foam. So I got in touch with, managed to get in touch with the ice cream team at Unilever, people who'd worked on the ice cream team. And it's a character called Paul Hart, who is a food industry insider. He's an ex-biochemist, and he was really on the team that developed a huge number of our most popular ice creams. These are ice creams that they'll have in the States as well. And he said a really interesting thing, that the project of modern ice cream, the ideal thing would be to make essentially ice cream that has the texture of frozen ice cream that you can transport around the place at room temperature. Because the real expense in ice cream is that you've got to keep it at minus 18 degrees from a factory all the way to the supermarket fridge, and it has to maintain its consistency. And so modern ice cream has, if you look at the label, it's true for almost all of them: xanthan gum, stabilizers, guar gum, locust bean gum, carrageenan, And these are long chain polymers that create this very, very stable foam. And some of them may be harmless. Xanthan gum is one of the most common. It's found in gluten-free bread as well. It gives a slimy, slippery texture to things. It's very common in low-fat mayonnaise. And it's a bacterial exudate, so it's a slime secreted by a bacterial that normally causes vegetables to rot. And we don't exactly know what it does to our guts, but it seems to promote the growth of bacteria in our guts that don't exist in populations that don't eat xanthan gum. And those populations are quite remote. They're indigenous tribal peoples in Central Africa and southern and Amazonia.
So, Chris, ice cream is actually a pretty simple food to make with just the classic ingredients, right? Cream and sugar and possibly eggs and a flavoring. Is it all about money? Is that why commercial brands end up containing all that junk you just mentioned?
So a crucial part of the definition of ultra-processed food, the formal definition, is that it is food designed for profit. And once you understand the food system, not as a system that exists to deliver food to you, but that as a system that exists to extract money from you, then everything starts to make sense. So you might imagine that it would be much cheaper to make an ice cream with, as you say, 4 ingredients. You make it cream, milk, vanilla, sugar, and an egg. It's just a frozen whipped custard. In fact, if you can replace the animal fats in any of these foods with vegetable fats, so if you can replace butters with palm stearin, these refined, modified oils, if you can replace the sugar with sweeteners, if you can replace the eggs with other emulsifiers, synthetic emulsifiers or soy lecithin, and you can replace the dairy fats with other plant oils, and even the complex carbohydrates with these much more synthetic, modified carbohydrates, modified maize starches, and you replace your vanilla bean extract with just synthesized vanilla flavoring, everything becomes cheaper. And so the logic of all of this food is it's about delivering shareholder value. So some of the academic work I do is really trying to prove that despite what they say, the transnational food corporations that feed, the same ones feed you and me, you in the States, me in London, it's all the same companies, they explicitly value their shareholders over all other priorities. Essentially, they behave like most publicly limited companies, and in particular, they're behaving more and more like the tobacco industry used to.
My guest is Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, a practicing physician and associate professor at University College London, also a BBC broadcaster. His new book is called Ultra-Processed People, the science behind the food that isn't food. We'll be right back.